One thing that most people get wrong is that emotional maturity isn't about never getting triggered. It's about what you do next when you are. Everyone gets reactive sometimes, but emotionally mature people handle it differently. They don't repress it, they don't explode, and they don't pretend that everything's fine when it's clearly not. They pause and they reflect, and then they consciously respond instead of react. So today I'm breaking down 5 things that emotionally mature people do when they feel triggered so that you can use those same tools when your emotions start to try to run the show. But first, if you're new here, my name is Julia Kristina, and I am a therapist, a speaker, an author, and the creator of my membership community, the Shift Society, where we are taking this work to the next level and you're being guided and supported the whole way through. I help smart, sensitive people get emotionally grounded, confident, and connected, even when life or their relationships are feeling messy. So let's dive in. The first thing that emotionally mature people do is they notice the trigger before reacting to it. Emotionally mature people know that there's a difference between feeling triggered and acting out on that trigger. They're able to tune in and catch that first wave of the emotion as it's starting to go up. That racing heart, that clenched jaw, that kind of tension that they start to feel over their whole body, that heat rising in their body. And instead of snapping or immediately shutting down, they pause. And that pause is everything. Because in that micro moment of that pause, they shift from automatic reaction to conscious choice. That pause is also a practice. And sometimes it can take a minute of us learning how to tune into ourselves and noticing when the tension is starting to rise and intervening quickly before it gets too high and our logical mind goes offline and we start to see red and then just start to get kind of feeling that reactive out of control. And so catching it in that rise before it gets too high and then taking that pause. Taking that moment, taking that breath, and even bringing in some kind of grounding thought to get themselves back online. Something like, this feeling is information. This feeling is telling me that something inside me is going on, but I don't need to let it control my next step. I don't need to let this feeling dictate what happens next. I get to do that. My conscious self, my emotionally mature self, my awareness building self gets to do that. And that awareness can change the entire outcome of the situation. The next thing that emotionally mature people do is they regulate before they respond. They know that they can't talk themselves out of a trigger. And if you've ever tried that, you know that too. And maybe you thought that there was something wrong with you and you were the only one who couldn't do it when you're feeling really an intense emotion right up in there. And you try to tell yourself to just calm down, to just get over it, to not take it so seriously, to not take it personally. And let me ask you, how well did that work? My guess is that it didn't work at all because that's not the way that human brains work. It's not your brain that it didn't work for. It's no brains that it works for, because when we are in the height of an emotion, it's the amygdala, the emotion center, that fight, flight, or freeze response that has taken over, and our logical mind has gone offline. And so we can't access logical thought in order to regulate intense emotion in that moment. Emotionally mature people know that they need to breathe their way through it first, that they need to be settling and calming their body and their brains in order to settle that initial kind of amygdala fight, flight, or freeze response first, so that the logical part of the brain can come back online, because logic doesn't work when the system is flooded. So we need to unflood it. We need to open up the drain and drain out some of that intensity of the emotion first before we can access that more grounded, responsible, conscious part of our brain. And then we can choose what we want to do or say next. Taking 90 seconds. That's what evidence shows, what research shows, is the time it takes for a big emotion to course through the body. Just taking 90 seconds just to breathe, to be, to take a break, to take a quick, very quick bath, whatever that is that you need to ground yourself again before you reply to the text, before you hit send on the email, before you respond to the tense conversation. Being able to say something like, I just need a minute, or I need to collect myself, or we need to come back to this because I have to calm myself down first. Or if it's in the case of like a text or an email, just not hitting send until you've done that reset. Now, you can write the email, you can write the text if you need to just sort of vent and get it off your chest. And just sort of that can help too with processing that big emotion to bring you back to calm. But please don't hit send, because you know that saying, a moment to breathe in a moment of anger saves 1,000 moments of regret. And giving yourself that time to just breathe and reset so that you don't have to deal with all the regret, that's what we're going for. The next thing emotionally mature people do is they take responsibility for their own emotions and don't blame others for them. Emotionally mature people understand that other people can spark your emotions, but they don't actually cause them. Instead of immediately saying something like, well, it's your fault, you made me angry, they take a step back and they get curious and they think, something in me got activated when they said that. What's that about? They take that moment to look a little bit deeper and to try to understand first and not immediately going into blaming someone else. Because the truth is, when someone hits something in us, when we get reactive, when we get triggered, it's because it's hitting something in us. It's hitting a fear. It's hitting a vulnerability. It's hitting something tender, which is why we have this big reaction. And so instead of blaming them for what they did or said, which again, they can spark that emotion, but it's sparking something in us. We get curious. As the ones who are working on becoming more emotionally mature, we get curious. What's coming up for me right now? That shift from blame to curiosity is one of the biggest signs of growth. It's not easy and it's not just a one and done, but whenever you are able to catch that, when something is coming up inside of you, asking yourself, not what did they do or what did they say, but what did it trigger inside of me? It's not about fault. It's about awareness, because that awareness is what gives you your power back. And it prevents you from being at the whim of what other people are saying or doing. It gives you more say over your own well-being, over your own emotions, over your own state of mind than it does other people, because we don't want to be running around feeling like other people are more in charge or have more control over our mental and emotional well-being than we do. The next thing that emotionally mature people do is they make space for their own truth and the other person's truth. When triggered, an emotionally immature reaction can sound something like, you're just wrong and you don't get it. An emotionally mature one sounds something more like, I see it differently. Can I explain how it felt for me? Emotionally mature people don't collapse into people-pleasing or explode into defensiveness. They stay centered enough to hold two realities at once, theirs and the other person's. The goal, again, isn't to be right, isn't to prove someone wrong, it's to understand. It's not me against you, it's us against the issue, and we're working together to understand it and to work through it so that we can have better connection, better collaboration, better care. And the next thing that emotionally mature people do, they reflect afterwards instead of ruminating. So let's say that they explode, they react, they don't handle the situation the way that they wanted to. But instead of going into that self-blame, instead of going through and replaying it and criticizing themselves and saying, I'm such a terrible person, I can't believe that I did that, what's wrong with me? They make any repair that is necessary, but then they go in and they reflect on it, not to punish themselves, but to learn from themselves. Wow, I had a really big reaction to that trigger, or I had a really big trigger there. What was coming up for me? What did I need in that moment? What felt tender for me? And I obviously didn't show up in the way that I wanted to. So how do I want to show up next time? What do I want to learn from this? How do I want to grow from this? What do I want to do differently the next time that something like this happens? And it's probably going to start with bringing in that pause and that breath and that curiosity and awareness as to what's going on instead of immediately going into reaction. And so using any misstep or mistake or quote unquote failure, I actually don't believe in failure in the typical sense of the word. I think in any outcome, either we win or we learn. And so if we can use this one because we didn't handle it the way that we wanted to, then we learn from it and we get curious and we reflect and we decide at that moment, what do I want to pay attention to next time? What do I want to be aware of next time? What are the signs that I'm starting to get activated that I want to start noticing next time? How do I want to handle it next time? That is exactly how emotional maturity grows. One reflection and learning at a time. So remember that emotional maturity isn't about being unshakable. It's about being recoverable. It's noticing the wave of emotion, that flood that's coming in and filling you up with all the big feelings, and then steadying yourself, grounding yourself, finding your calm so that you can consciously choose how you want to show up next. That is the work, and I don't have to tell you, it is worth it. But if you're curious to know how emotionally grounded you are and your typical reacting style when you get triggered, then I have a free quiz for you. It's called How Emotionally Grounded Are You? Aptly named. And it's going to tell you what your typical reacting style is when you're triggered. And then it's going to give you some really simple, straightforward, but effective grounding tools and regulation techniques that you can start using right away. It's completely free. The link to that is in the description below. And as you're doing the quiz and you start to see your reacting style, again, this isn't about judgment. This isn't about criticism. This is just about awareness, because when we know better, we can show up better, we can learn better, we can do better. So using that to build that awareness and then letting yourself learn and grow from there. The link to that is in the description below. And also, if you know someone who would find this helpful, please do share it along with them. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so that we can stay connected. Grab that quiz, How Emotionally Grounded Are You Really? And as always, thanks so much for being here. Until next time, take good care of yourself, take good care of those around you. Bye for now.